Well, I'm sure you've had it all. Buy the dip, buy the dip, buy the dip. In this video, we are going to spell all of those myths. We're going to see what is going on in Nvidia stock. Is Nvidia stock a good buy? And should you buy Nvidia stock on the dip? Now, these questions do make sense if you know what type of investor you are. This channel is mostly based on technical analysis, which incorporates a little bit of fundamental analysis as well. So it does work for swing traders and long-term traders who are using technical analysis for their buying and selling decisions. If you're a value investor or you do dollar cost averaging, then this video might help you learn some things new in order to smoothen up your strategy. If you're a day trader, this video is not going to help you at all because we're going to be looking on the daily chart and the monthly chart and the weekly chart to see where Nvidia is going to be going for the longer run. Before we go into it, we first have to get the perfect chart setup. You must have your weekly chart on the side, and I do recommend putting the 10-week and the 30-week simple moving averages. These help us see the bigger picture of things. On the daily chart, we do have the 20-week exponential moving average and then the 50-week simple moving average. This is where we know when to get in and get out and have those very tight stops. Because the type of investing or long-term trading that I do is that I want to be risking about 4% to be getting 70%. So those are very good risk to reward ratios. So Nvidia will start out by looking at the earnings. The first thing that we see in Nvidia's earnings is that the earnings are fantastic. Nvidia literally is the best stock on the stock market. It is holding up the whole USA stock market. Why do I say that? Earnings per share growth, we like to see an average of 40% over the last 4 quarters. Nvidia has been doing 700%, 600%, 170%, 110%. This is crazy. It's very hard to explain to a person how crazy this is. And such super performance makes stocks go up like nuts. That's why we saw this 1000% run in Nvidia. Revenue, we like to see an average of 25% year over year over the last 4 quarters. Nvidia is calling those numbers babies. It's literally doing hundreds of percentages, which is perfect. Return on equity, we like to see at least 17%. Nvidia is doing 119%. I don't think I've seen a stock like this in a very, very long time. The fact is that Nvidia's earnings are magnanimous. They are super. But one thing you have to remember is that Nvidia is a growth stock. What does a growth stock mean? I'm sure a lot of you know what a growth stock means, but I don't think you know what it means for its stock price. A growth stock is highly priced on what it's going to be doing in the future. Now, let me just show you a very quick example here. Watch closely as I increase the size of this table. I'm going to increase the earnings to the last 10 quarters. So let's also go back to those particular dates. I want to pay attention. I want to show you something interesting. This is January 2023. Look here. Where is January 2023? Here, right before the earnings became good. What does that tell you? Are you seeing something interesting? Growth stocks are based on what they're going to be doing in their future. So investors who knew what Nvidia was doing before it actually reported good earnings, they started loading up on the stock here at the equivalent of $14 at a time. So you can see it does here. This is a very good signal. If you sign up for the newsletter, there's a resources page. I teach all of these signals. It starts to go up. So by the time Nvidia is having these good earnings, these earnings were predicted before. So what we are seeing right now is that the earnings are starting to slow down and decelerate, which is a very bad sign for growth stocks. It goes from 1,000 to 700, 600 to 170 to 110 to 81, right? So that means that earnings are decelerating. The stock is not growing anymore, or it's growing but at a very slow pace, right? And since it's not going to be growing as much as it was growing before, then its price cannot be going up. Does that make sense? Its price is based on what it's going to be doing in the future. So if that future is not looking that great, then the stock is very unlikely to go up right now. And that's what we are seeing in the price. These growth stocks, when the earnings start to slow down like this, to decelerate, then they start to fall. So a lot of big companies in the past do fall on good earnings, like Elf Beauty. This is just a very simple example. Elf Beauty had very good earnings. Look at the earnings table. Let's look at where the stock topped. March 2024. Here. So let's see the earnings. Yeah, by the time it topped, the earnings were still looking okay. It had just had one bad quarter. But you see, the earnings were still looking great. Fantastic, just like Nvidia is doing right now. Since the earnings were not going to be doing well in the future, the stock dropped. And that's what is happening in Nvidia right now. Enough with the earnings. Now we start to go into the technical analysis, the detailed one. One thing that we see that I don't like is this 10, 30-week crossing over on the weekly chart. And Nvidia, whenever it does this crossover, I realize that it has an average drop of about 50%. So here, when we do have a crossover, just measure from the crossover to the bottom, 57%. You see that? When was the last time it had another crossover? It's here, 50%. It had the crossover there. When was another time it had one of those major crossovers? This baby crossover here, 11%. That was cute. Okay, now let's see. Now the real crossovers. There's a crossover here, 40%. There's a crossover here, 45%. There's a crossover here, 80%. I don't know if that's going to happen, but you get the gist. So we've seen that those crossovers do an average of about 50%. From this crossover, where is 50%? That's about $65, $60. And Nvidia is not there yet. So that's a very bearish sign. So I don't think the crash of Nvidia is over because it has had this very bearish crossover. Because a lot of people are telling you, buy the dip, buy the dip, buy the dip. But remember, at the peak of all of this, Nvidia was a $3 trillion company. So if it has crashed 42%, that means 1.5 trillion has flown out. What does that mean? That means that people who have trillions of dollars have sold. Let me say you have 10,000. Are you going to be fighting $1 trillion worth of selling? Just ask yourself these simple questions. And someone who has $1 trillion and is selling the stock, why would you who has $1 buy it? Most likely they know something that you don't know. So please follow the price action. Stop buying the dip unless you know what type of investor you are. Buying the dip works if you're a value investor, you know, understand the intrinsic value of the stock, or you're doing dollar cost averaging in the stock market. But if you don't know what you're doing and you're just buying the dip on your own without a strategy, you know, that's a very disastrous move. And I don't advise you to do that. Please don't do it until you've made a strategy for you that you understand and works. Now, of course, Nvidia can still recover from here because I do see one good sign. There is this support over here that we are seeing. It does bounce up on very huge volume, so that's a very good sign. And also this looks like an engulfing pattern. It closes above the close of the previous week on huge volume. So yeah, it could be recovering, but we don't know. That's the truth. You have to watch the price. You have to watch the price. Price is king. Don't listen to the news. Then the next thing is we had a very strong bearish sign on the relative strength indicator. This is an indicator which has one signal which you can learn today. And that signal is that whenever the relative strength indicator falls on the 60 level, it goes up and then fails on the 60 level. That's a very bearish signal. You see it here. Goes up, falls on the 60 level. This one's a little bit not as clean as this one, but you get what I'm saying. So in the past, whenever it fell from that 60 level, there was a 62% drop. That was not the only time here. 60% drop. We see that same signal here. Okay, that signal came again over here. Well, this one not the same, but 2010, yeah, 54% drop. So 2007, I don't know if that will happen, 85% drop. But you get the gist. Nvidia did an average of 60% drop from whenever it had that bad relative strength indicator signal. So, you know, that signal, when did it happen? Here, just at the top. So let's see, 60% from the top. Yeah, around the $60 mark, which we talked about before. That's also another bearish sign that we have to watch out for. Then a really interesting bearish sign that I saw, because I'm not seeing a lot of bullish signs. So these are some trend lines I've drawn for you. Trend lines can only be trusted if they touch at least 3 points. So you see Nvidia came, broke this horizontal support. That's the first thing. Whenever trend lines break the support, the stock normally comes back to test that support. It also breaks this slanting support. Sometimes you have to draw multiple trend lines so that you can see what's going on. So Nvidia falls through, comes back and tests the support. Good sign. Crashes again, expected. Horizontal support, we can call this a test as well. Maybe not. Crashes again. And then what is happening right now? I do see the trend line over here. Do you see that? Yeah, you see that trend line, this lowering trend line. Nvidia is bouncing off this trend line. So basically, I think what's happening is that Nvidia is going to go up for a little while, because what normally happens is that once stocks have this crossover, they don't just fall, they come and test it, right? They don't just fall. They come, they try to go up, they try to recover. And then I think it's going to come to try to recover, because if we go back here on the weekly chart, we can see that very huge bar, a very nice bullish bar as well. And it looked like Nvidia was about to do something beautiful that time. So it comes up, tries to recover, and it crashes. So that's something which I think might be happening here. I think Nvidia is going to try to recover a little bit. It might test this support about 130, and people are going to be like, yeah, the stock market is back. And then it's just going to crash again. Because remember, 1.5 trillion has been sold, right? So for it to go back, 1.5 trillion has to come in. But the fact is that people have refused to bring that 1.5 trillion dollars back. The question you have to ask yourself is why? Why isn't that $1 trillion coming back? So don't fight the price. So we've gone through it all. Is Nvidia a buy right now? I'm not a value investor, so value investing might say something different. I'm not quite sure about that. I use technical analysis and a little bit of fundamental analysis. So we've looked at the earnings, return on equity. We've looked at the technical analysis. Technical analysis looks bad. The earnings are fantabulous, but for a growth stock, they're decelerating, which is not a good sign. So I'd say it's not a buy right now. It's time to be patient. If you don't have the stock, don't buy it. It might be able to be shorted very soon. If you have the stock, I would say that look to get out, right? I think it's going to try to recover. If it goes to 130, I would just hit the sell button if I had the stock. And then we can see. So it might come up, form a chit or a handle, as we call it, and then it might break out again. Conditions might change. The fact is that technical analysis is a probability. We really don't know the future. We just have to see from what the price is telling us. And whenever we see a good signal on that price, we do take action. May the markets be with you.